Good morning, everyone. This is indeed a celebration of Renaissance. Our return to National Poetry Month programming is a shift infused by hope, cast in appreciation for the possibilities, for the rigor of creating, the craft of revising, the challenge of teaching, and the joy of performing and publishing poetry for both new and established poets. This year, for the first time, we are welcoming teachers in their classes from Henderson High School, as well as nearly 100 middle schoolers from Prince, Valley Forge, Tedrick, and East Middle Schools, and as we celebrate our first pop-up poetry festival. It is the centerpiece of our craft festival, WCU's Poetry and Creative Arts Fest. Where are the kids from Henderson? Pierce? Where, okay, Valley Forge? Tedrick and Easttown? Raise your hand. Represent. Yeah, y'all. I'm Dr. Pollard. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the director of the Poetry Center. And now, so today's events were planned with direct input from WCU undergraduate and graduate students, several of whom have been instrumental in our campus and community outreach. Our student outreach has been coordinated by Ms. Emma Dwyer, an English major with a minor in business and writing, and Ms. Amber Lee Haggerty, an English teacher at Pierce Middle School, who is on sabbatical serving this semester as the Poetry Center's graduate intern. She was instrumental in planning today's programming and spearheading the outreach to the schools. Amber Lee and Emma, are you here? Okay. Okay. And then two English BSED students, Cassandra Hoagland and Caitlin Overdoster, have been with us throughout the entire planning process. They've designed activities that are both educational and engaging. And finally, last but not least, English graduate student Sarah Nagel. She's going to be our MC on the quad today, and Esther Mack have also designed programs and volunteered to help with student activities. Our keynote speaker and featured reader, Patricia Smith, is a celebrated contemporary poet whose life and work exemplifies Renaissance. In the world of poetry, what the insiders call the poet is, there are binaries such as stage versus page, formalist versus free verse. Poets who consider themselves to be performance poets or stage poets would never dare limit themselves to the page, or vice versa. Formalist poets might never sully themselves by experimenting with free verse, and free verse poets might raise an eyebrow at the formalist love of constraint. But not Patricia Smith, four-time National Slam champion, the most successful in the competition's history, went on to bulldoze over all those limitations, eschewing expectation and false boundaries. Ms. Smith continued on a path that has resulted in one of the most successful careers in contemporary poetry. Shifting from page to stage necessitated a marriage of Smith's powerful command of language with her deep understanding of the emotional work that is possible in combining her ear for the vernacular and love of language, and highlighting her tremendous talent with the power of meter and the beautiful constraint of form, the result of a phenomenal career. She is the 2021 recipient of the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize for Lifetime Achievement, presented by the Poetry Foundation, a 2022 inductee of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She is the author of 9 books of poetry, the most recent being Unshuttered, Incendiary Art, winner of the 2018 Kingsley Top Poetry Award, the 2017 Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and the 2018 NAACP Image Award, and was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. She's also the author of Should Have Been Jimmy Savannah, winner of the Lenore Marshall Prize by the Academy of American Poets, Blood Dazzler, a National Book Award finalist, and Gotta Go, Gotta Flow, a collaboration with award-winning Chicago photographer Michael Abramson. There's a multiple other list of books, but we want to hear her read. And she's the winner of multiple awards and fellowships, and she's a professor of creative writing at Princeton, and a faculty member of the Vermont College Fine Arts Postgraduate Residency Program. Please join me in welcoming Patricia Smith.
How's everybody doing? Good? Woo! Where's my middle schoolers? Yeah. Guys. I love middle school. All right, I'm supposed to do this very cool technique stuff first. Put this here, and I'll turn this on. Hello, 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 hello. Is that okay? Hello. I have to read like this. Okay, let me adjust this a little bit. Isn't this exciting? It's an exciting world of a poet. Look at this. Hello? Are you getting it okay? Yeah. Okay, great. Is everybody here?
Yeah.
You guys in the back? Good? Okay. Thank you. I'm very, very glad to be here. I actually, and thank you, Cherise, for that great introduction. I am going to, I teach writing, and before I started teaching at Princeton, I was teaching at City University of New York. It was the College of Staten Island, or as I like to call it, the College of Satanic Island. And my students didn't like to write. They hated writing, so I used to have to trick them into it. So one day it was time for their final, and I came in and I said, guess what? Good news, no final. They were like, yay! They carried me around on their shoulders for a while. And then I said, but there's something else that I want you to do. I want you to write me a poem about what your most difficult age, right? So some of you guys, what was your most difficult age? Yeah? Yell it out. 17, 13, 35, yesterday. These guys are like 8. 10. All right, so I asked my class, and the consensus in my class was the most difficult age was 13. Okay? So when you think about 13, I mean, I know you guys are all like really happy, but when you think about 13, it's like your voice is cracking, things are going on, you're not really sure, you know. So I said, here's what I want you to do for your new final. I want you to write a poem about being 13. I want it to be 13 stanzas, 13 lines, and 13 syllables each line. And that was the new final. Now, anytime I give my students something, I do it myself. So I was writing about my 13, which was very different from theirs, but some things are just universally miserable. You know, so I'm not going to read all 13 stanzas, don't worry. I'm just going to read a couple. The poem is called 13 Ways of Looking at 13. And yeah, and I'm looking to see, okay, yeah, I can do that one. Okay, we're good. Okay, so, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit. The first one, I was thinking about my mother, like, you guys know when I say pressing my hair, you know what I'm talking about, right? Using that iron comb to sort of straighten your hair out. So this is the first one. Right now, this Tuesday in July, nothing's headier than the words sheen, manageable, bounce. Squinting into the smeared mirror, you search your head for them. You probe with greased fingers, spreading paths in the chaos, wide enough for the advertised glimmer to escape, but your snarls hold tight to their woven dry confounding. Fevered strands snap under the drag of the wiry brush, and order unfurls, while down the hall Mama rotates the hot comb in a blaze and smacks her joyful gum. Still, TV bellows its promise. You witness the snap of the perfect neck and hear the impossible vow. Shampoo with this, you'll have sheen and bounce. Her corn-soaked head is gospel. It's so true. Come here, child. Even your mother's calling you burns. Okay, so I have a favorite word. Who has a favorite word? Nobody? Nobody has a favorite word? Are you just afraid to tell us what it is? Okay, my favorite word is anemone. I just love the way it sounds. So this is the story of an enemy. So I was in 4th grade. Miss Stein scribbled a word on the blackboard, said, who can pronounce this? and the word was anemone. And from that moment, you first felt the clutter of possible in your mouth. From the time you stumbled through the rhythm and she slow smiled, you suddenly knew you had the right to be explosive, to sling syllables through back doors, to make up your own words if you needed them. All that day, sweet anemone tangled in your teeth, spurted sugar tongue, led you to the dictionary where you were assured that it existed, to the cave of the bathroom where you warbled it and bounced echo, and finally, convinced you owned that teeny gospel, you wrote it again and again and again, and 7, 8. Okay, now I'm not even going to explain this one. In the bathroom of the whatnot joint on the way to school, you get rid of the starched envelope lace, Warrette's temming unraveling braids, white knee socks, and sensible hues. From a plastic bag, you take out, I was a sad child, electric blue eyeshadow, platforms with silver glittered heels, neon fishnets, and a blouse that doesn't so much button as suggest shut. The transformation takes 5 minutes, and you emerge feeling like a budding lady, but looking, in retrospect, like someone bursting from a cocoon. This is what television does. Turns your mother into clueless backdrop and fills your pressed head with the probability of throne. Your body becomes not just yours anymore, it's a dumb little marquee. Okay, so when I was a kid, I used to dress up, and I would put my daddy's white shirt over my head and let the sleeves hang down either side, and then I would go going around the house doing the sleeves like this, and put on my mother's makeup and stuff. So this is about that. With your bedroom door closed, you are skyscraper bouffant, peach foundation, eyelashes like upturned claws. You are exuding ice. You are pinched by earrings. You are way too much woman for this room. The audience has one chest, a single shared chance to gasp. They shudder, heave, waiting for you to open your mouth and break their hearts. Taking the stage, you become an S, for 8 in the hip swings. Tisk, tisk, as the front row collapses. They really want to hear you. You lift the microphone. Something illegal comes out of you. And Mama flings the door open with a church version of your name. Then you are pimpled, ashed, and double Dutch knees. You are spindles. You are singing into a toothbrush. Painful, right? All right. Oh, that's okay. I can do that. 12. This is my first crush. That boy does not see you. He sees through you. You are the exact shade of the failed paper bag test, the Aunt Esther. You are hair forever turning back in the direction from which it came. You are clacky knees and nails bitten to blood. Stumbling forth in black prescribed shoes, you have no knowledge of his knowledge. That boy does not see you. So squeeze your eyes shut and imagine. Imagine just your name's first syllable in the sugared well of his throat. Dream of all the ways he is not walking past you again, turning his eyes to the place where you are, where you're standing, where you shake, where you pray, where you aren't. 13. You're almost 14. And you think you're ready to push beyond the brutal wisdoms of the 1 and the 3, but some nagging crave in you doesn't want to let go. You suspect that you will never be this unfinished, all Hail Mary and precipice, stuttering sachet, fuses suddenly lit and spitting, and you'll need to give your hips a name for what they did while you weren't there. You'll miss the pervasive fever that signals blooming and the sore lessons of jump rope in your calves. Sighing, you push Barbie's perfect body through the thick dust of the top shelf. There, her prideful heart thunders. She has hardened you well, and she has taught you everything. Okay. I recently, everybody has a teacher that they remember, right? Okay, so I grew up in Chicago. I grew thing with our schools, the teachers had already kind of decided that we weren't going to achieve. So they hired teachers who just were there to kind of pass the time. And when I got into 5th grade, I had a teacher, and her name was Carol Baranowski. And Carol Baranowski believed, I told her I wanted to be a writer, and she believed in me. She kept me after class, gave me extra writing, talked to my parents about what school I should go to when I left the elementary school. And you don't realize until like some years later sometimes how important someone is to you. So I started asking, I couldn't find her anymore, and so I started asking educational societies in Chicago if they could find her, if they knew some way that I could find her. And I couldn't find her, and finally someone sent me an email and said, I think this is the woman that you're looking for. And it was an obituary notice. And she had just died. So I got an email for her daughter, and I sent her daughter a nice long note about how important her mother was to me, and now we're communicating. But I have to thank her because it's one thing to write, it's another thing to realize yourself that it's what you were meant to do, and that's what she helped me do. So this was a poem that I wrote for her. I was obsessed with her in 5th grade. In 5th grade, I was driven wild by you, my teacher, copper pixie with light shining from beneath it, eyes giggling azure through crinkled squint. I let you rub my hair, I let you probe the kinks, I clutched you, buried my nose in the sting starch of your white blouses. I asked you if you thought I was smart. Did you know how much I wanted to come home with you, to cry on what had to be a bone-colored carpet? I found out where you lived. I dressed in the morning with you in mind. I spelled huge words for you. I opened the dictionary and started with A. I wanted to impress you. I didn't mind my skin because you didn't mind my skin. I opened big books and read to you and watched TV news and learned war and weather for you. I needed you in me enough to take home, enough to make me stop rocking my own bed at night, to ignore the banging on my front door, my daddy banging and my mama not letting him in. I prayed first to God and then to you, first to God and then to you, and next to God, then just to you. Miss Carol Baranowski, do you even remember the crack of surrender under your hand? Do you remember my ankle socks kissed with orange roses, socks turned perfectly down, and the click of the taps in my black shiny shoes that were always pointed toward you, always walking your way, always dancing for a word from you? I looked and looked for current, that second of flow between us, but our oceans were different. Yours was wide and blue, and mine was this one, yes. I think it's going to appear fade. Yes. Okay. So there's a mention here of a sour pickle in this poem. So, as I said, I think I said, I'm from Chicago. And one of the things we used to do is there would be a store on the way to school, and we would call it the Whatnot store. And you could go in there, and you can get all the stuff you weren't supposed to have in school. You get candy, you can get these iced Long Johns, you can get somebody to play a record. Okay, remember those round things? Round things, they had little grooves in them, and you would put a needle on them, and sound would come out as it's, okay. So when I was a kid, if you wanted to hear a record, you would say to the person in the store, can I hear that record? And they would put it on the record player and play it for you, and you can decide whether or not you wanted to buy it. It was a little 45. So there was these great stores. They had school supplies and all. But one of the things all these stores had was a big barrel, and the barrel was full of sour pickles. So you would tell the lady, I want a sour pickle. And she said, okay. And she would experience And then what you do, you bite off the top, you would get a long candy cane, peppermint stick. You would plunge the peppermint stick down the center of the pickle, and then you would eat the pickle and the peppermint stick together. So, I'm telling you, some good eating. Don't even try it. Don't even try it. Really, and then I realized it was showing up in a lot of my poems, and people would go, ugh. But it was so much a thing, and I'm probably older than anybody in here, but it was so much a thing that if you go to a drugstore in downtown Chicago now, they have up near the front a row of like the pickles in bags with the juice, and then next to it they will have the peppermint sticks. Yeah, I'm telling you, just try it. I know you're all going to try it and not tell me, but try it anyway. It was really good. And I'm saying that because I might read a couple of poems that have pickles and peppermint sticks, and I don't want to just go by and you say it. So now you know. Okay, and then I'll tell you some other things I used to eat one of these days. This is from my favorite poet. Who's heard of Gwendolyn Brooks? Okay, the other poets. And that man back there. So Gwendolyn Brooks was not from Chicago, but she was very much a Chicago poet. And I was lucky enough to get to know her while she was coming to readings and doing things. And then when she died, Chicago changed for me. So this is my Gwendolyn Brooks poem. I have one more. Winter, with its dust and giddy twist of ice, is gone now. It's time for warmth again. So where is Gwendolyn Brooks? Its huge shoulders slumped, Chicago craves her hovel, turns pissed and gray, and undusts her name. I will tell you a lot about where I grew up to. To know her, you need to know her city's wide, watery hips. You need to inhale a sausage smothered in gold-slipping onions while standing on a chaotic street cross where any jazz could be yours. You need to walk the hurting fields of the West Side, our slice of city burned to its bones in '68. Goldblatts, the colored Bloomingdales, gone. Learners, where we learned pinafore, gone. No more havens for layaway, no more places to plop down $1 a week for PF flyers or wool jumpers with seams glued shut. The meat market with its bloody sawdust, torched, its proprietors now crisping under Florida sun. And flap-jowled Bear Daily, our big benevolent murderous daddy, gifted us with high-rise castles crafted of $30, battered cans of bumpy milk, and free cheese. To know Gwen, you need to know the Alex, the only movie theater on the West Side where frisky rats, big as toddlers, poked slow noses into your popcorn, then locked red round eyes on the screen and sat confident and transfixed. After the movies and any street corner's fried lunch, we'd head to the store in the back of that man's house to surrender hoarded quarters for the latest 45, stripped licorice, striped, it says stripped here, mistake 20 years later. Striped licorice in black or red, pork rinds, Boston baked beans, or fat sour pickles floating in a jar in the corner. The man's wife, Miss Caroline, plunged her hammy forearm into the brine, pulled out the exact pickle you pointed to, and shoved it deep into a single-ply paper bag. Only the truly crazy would then poke a peppermint stick down the center of that pickle and slurp the dizzy of salt and sugar. We gnawed rock-stiff candy dots off paper columns, suffered lemon heads and red hots, pushed neon sweat socks down on our calves, and my Lord, we learned to switch. For a dime, that man would warm up the record player, click reject, and give us a hit of Miss Fontella Bass, her heartbroken heart clamoring for rescue, or Ruby Andrews, steady wailing in a woman way. There were so many millions of us, ashy goddesses, walking the Wild West, strutting past sloped storefronts where brown meat and hog's head crowded the windows. There was an actual hog's head in the window of a hog, just the head. In the window, it was supposed to make you say, "Ooh, I'm hungry," and go in and buy some buy some meat. It was always there. Okay. Hog's head crowded the windows, past shuttered groceries and gas stations, past fashion palaces, where almost no money satisfied our yearning for hollow glamour. coming back. They don't hear you. They don't see you. They ain't never really needed you. They got the Holy Ghost in Garfield Park. On one city block, they got 100 ways to buy chicken. They jump rope, nasty and barefoot in the dirt. They got the ooh-achi-coo, the big plastic clothesline underhand. They got the Gwen in them. And any jazz could be ours. Her jazz was. Unflinching in her head wrap and thick 2 shades, 2 stockings, she penned the soundtrack of We because she knew. Because she was skinny early church and not bending. Because she could peer at you over those Coke bottle specs and turn the sorry sight of you into her next poem. Each year she stays gone, we girls aimlessly walk and search dangerous places for music. Chicago bows its huge head and grudgingly accepts spring. God, if there is a you, there must surely still be a her. Stop the relentless seasons. Show us your face. Explain your skewed timing and your wacky choice of angels. Are we going to do a question and answer or no? Okay, we can do a question and answer. Okay, so let me know. Two more, and then question and answer. Okay, you guys okay? I don't care about anybody else except you. You guys are good? I do care about you guys. That's for sure. Let's see. Okay, all right. All right. Oh, okay. Okay, so ideas for poems come from all over. Oh, and anybody who's here who's also coming to the reading tonight, I'll be doing like all different poems, so don't worry. So I used to love, and I don't see them anymore. They used to have these newspapers, and they would have like crazy things like, Martians living among us and stuff like that. They stopped doing it, I guess, because they figured nobody believes that anymore, but nowadays anybody believes anything. So I got this headline, and I just kept moving it around on my desk until I said I have to. And the headline was, "Boy sneezes, head explodes." And I was like, okay, that's it, yeah. So that's and inspirations for poems come from anywhere. You read that, you cannot not write a poem about that, right? Boy sneezes, head explodes. I love this first line. There are no pictures with this story. Strange when one considers the possibilities. There could be a dim pre-sneeze montage, dim photos of a boy being bounced on his father's knee, a terse 8th grade graduation shot, or something taken at Boy Scout camp 4 years ago. Any shot with his head still attached to his shoulders would pretty much get the point across. Or afterwards, man on the street candidates of surprised passersby, showered with bits of gray matter, shards of nostril, clumps of hair, ragged shreds of facial tissue. I'm so sorry. The tabloids could run full-color action shots of the poor guy's torso teetering back and forth, doing that crazy circumstance dance, and finally falling, flopping on the sidewalk like a guppy. The electronic media would be sure to pick up the audio as some witless jerk mumbles, "Gesundheit." Or even worse, "God bless you." But I guess anything in the way of illustration would either be too early or too late. Who could see the pinpoint of irritation growing insistent like a hot white light in his head? Who could follow that errant bit of dust driven deep by the wind? How could he know when he opened his mouth that once he closed it, it wouldn't be there? Oh, it's that kind of crowd. It's the missing head crowd. All right, I'm just doing a really quick. I put some pages and remembering to just be a kid, be excited about things. Don't get too educated. That's not the right thing to say. Don't get, you can get as educated as you want, just don't show it. No, that's not the right thing. Don't show off. Don't show off all your knowledge. Okay. So this is for my friend Patricia Zamora, because I think they're probably still looking for us because we tried to touch the Mona Lisa. Doing the Louvre. After we dump your husband in the Louvre's cafe to sip the steaming tea and chew on his poetry, we're off like schoolgirls, screeching in duet, dazzled by the bright eternal gasp of ancient things. We've got no business here, homegirl and compañera. We've got no business working our mouths around this sharp, exquisite language or savoring the sweet tongue squeeze of pastries, shining cakes, and shaved chocolates. We're of simpler stock, city and country dust, collard greens, moon pies, bullet holes, and basement slow dances. We are shamelessly American, rough street girls with rusty knees, the flip side of cocky Parisian wisp in slim cashmere coats the color of tobacco. Girlfriend, you and I are too much scream for this place, but you're a junkie just like I am. Too long denied access to official beauty, we walk these streets with our mouths open and faces tilted up, swallowing everything, swallowing it all, much too much scenery and sound for our thin American throats. We gawk at cathedrals with their gargoyles bleached to an eerie snarl by bright slashes of moon. Say goodbye when we mean yes, good morning when we mean how much, ask for bread when we need the toilet. We are amazed that no one is asking for all of this back, that we are allowed to bask in this city's light. I can still hear my mama as plain and practical as a cast iron skillet. You need to stop all that foolishness over there in some France where you don't know nothing or nobody. Ain't no black folks over there, no way. But I know you, old friend, with your burnished tangle of hair and deep laugh, and right now these halls belong to us. There are bad girls loose in the Louvre. Girls soft as gunshots. Girls nourished and fueled by silvers, silks, and the stone gaze of Napoleon. We laugh at the smashed noses of Egyptian rulers, stare at the tiny mummified feet of a young girl, mistake Goya for Gauguin, and rub what surfaces we can. When we say things like, hey, I think I saw this on a postcard once, or do you know how old this thing is? How can the world help but love us? We would give Venus our arms. After 8 hours clicking our hungry heels and snapping illicit flash photos in dark halls brimming with whispered music, we finally find the Mona Lisa. Alone, caged and antiseptic behind that glass every woman wears, and we wonder how best to free her, knowing that she's a junkie just like we are. She longs for our wild voices, our naive, accidental beauty. She's aching to ditch that frame and skip these hallowed halls with the homegirls, mistakenly obscene for the exquisite, and gaze at unsolved mysteries that just for once are not her own. Thank you. You guys are fantastic. Oops. And this is my last poem. So I wrote an entire book about a hurricane. I wrote a book about Hurricane Katrina. Every poem in this book has something to do with it. And when you are writing a book about something serious, it's really hard to write light poems. So I thought I've got to put something in here to give the reader a chance to breathe. So in this book, Katrina is personified. Katrina's like a woman. And so she looks at everything that's happened during the hurricane. She feels remorseful, she regrets things, she feels giddy, she feels vengeful. So I thought, okay, if she's a woman, she has to have a family. So Katrina's family would be the other hurricanes of 2005. So I looked to see the other hurricanes. Every year, they have a list of A through Z hurricanes. As the hurricanes occur, they check the list off, and every 5 years, the list reoccurs. unless a hurricane has caused an extensive amount of damage and they take the name off forever. So there will never be another Hurricane Katrina. But I thought, okay, so I'll just write something about her brothers and sisters. So these are the hurricanes of 2005 doing very un-hurricane-like things. Oops, here it is. Okay, it's called Siblings. Arlene learned to dance backwards in heels that were too high. Brett prayed for a shaggy mustache made of mud and hair. Cindy just couldn't keep it together. Dennis never learned to swim. Emily whispered her gust into 1,000 skins. Franklin, farsighted and anxious, bumbled villages. Gert spat her matronly name against the city's flat face. Harvey hurled a wailing child high. Irene, the baby girl, threw wild tantrums. Jose liked the whip sound of slapping, and Lee just craved the whip. Maria's thunderskirts flew high when she danced. Nate was mannered and practical. He stormed precisely. Ophelia nibbled weirdly on the tips of depressions. Felipe slept too late, flailing on a wronged ocean. Rita was a vicious flirt. She woke Felipe with rumors. Stan was born business, a gobbler of steel. Tammy pruned country, getting the words all wrong. Vince died before anyone could remember his name. Wilma opened her maw wide, flashing rot. None of them talked about Katrina. She was their odd sister, the blood dazzler. Oh, I need to tell you this. Okay, so I didn't have a name for this book, and I wrote that poem, and I got to, she was their odd sister, and I was like, and I just put the words blood dazzler in there to hold in place until I thought of something better, and then I finished the book, and I said, I need a title for that poem, and I mean, I need to put something in there, and I looked at blood dazzler, and I looked, and the more I looked at it, the more it fit, and it wound up not only going in the poem, but becoming the title of the book. So that's all the deep thought that goes into poetry. But anyway, thank you very much. Hi, Zoom people. Oh, bye.
Yeah, those are the college exams, but everybody else is hanging out.
They're going to do college.
Can you stand up and speak? I can't hear you. Oh, wait a minute. Here's the mic. Oh.
We're gonna move down, but she would like to know the name of the first book you read from.
What's the name of it?
It is called Should Have Been Jimmy Savannah, because my daddy wanted to name me Jimmy Savannah and my mother said no. Which would have been the coolest poet name ever, right? So yeah, so it's called Should Have Been, and this book has a lot of kind of growing up and childhood type stuff in it.
Thank you.
Sure.
My mother wanted to name me a certain name, and my grandmother said no.
And my mother, who was by no means creative, said, no, let's name her Patricia Ann.
That was the popular name back then.
It was, I didn't want to be named a popular name. Jimmy was so cool that even a boy could.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, president.
My grandma wanted me to meet one of my sisters to pass her name.
This is what I look like, his little stuff.
But
Anyway.
hers
What-
is A-N-N.
What is the most surprising object that's inspired a poem? Something very simple.
Oh, the most surprising object. I'm going to say, it's funny because I'm trying to do a collective work of poems now, so I've been looking at all my poems. Oh, I'm going to say the Charlie McCarthy's Dummy. Yeah, Charlie McCarthy's Dummy gonna read the whole poem.
What was his
but-
name? Mr.
Wait, was Charlie
Charlie
McCarthy?
McCarthy was the name of the dummy.
Yes, and now I don't remember the name of the.
Ventriloquist?
Okay, Charlie McCarthy, Edgar Bergen.
Edgar.
Yeah, because I'm old enough to remember there used to be a show called Thriller, and it was like Boris Karloff type thing, and there was a dummy who just started talking by itself, and so the dummies always held this really weird fascination for me, and so this is this. Okay, can I read it?
Yeah.
It's really short.
It's
Because I can't describe it.
Yeah, it's really also the inspiration for the song Michael Jackson's Thriller. Probably.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay. Okay, it's called Goodbye Charlie. Okay, few of us would believe, but the dummy understood why he suddenly had no voice. And although cold fists crammed their voices into the small of his back, although slim probing fingers made his eyes flap and bulge, he had no strength left to fashion words or to create them in the crevices of his lean face. So he too wished for the perfect death and allowed cool velvet to be draped over still rigid eyes, breathing as always through his skin. There was no tuxedo straight man in this new vertical casket. This is when Charlie McCarthy was given to a museum, and it was okay. In this new vertical casket, only the ghost of question and response. No brittle stage lights burning into his bone. No talking when he just didn't feel like it. No warm, familiar hands filling the void, becoming his blood and prompting his heartbeat. Only this unnatural hurt called quiet. Wouldn't be a bad life, really, this new gig. At least he wouldn't be skipping from dingy town to dirty city, holding his breath in the musty box or clicking champagne glasses and flirting with brainless starlets. Thank God, no more blinking against the cigar smoke in the Schaefer-Reed or dressing up in that stuffy formal wear just so foul-breathed children could beg to feel him in their laps. He simply didn't need them to sit upright. Almost done. With the master gone, laid down to simple silence, Charlie knew he could still sing him with a painful punchline, but no one else could urge his lips to laughter. Because through his eyes, moon brown and rimmed red with memory, he swore he could plainly see his own end. There, on the backs of his hands, the beginnings of wood.
Thank you.
So I think describe that. My good mind.
Okay. Are there any other questions from?
What's the longest poem you've ever written?
The longest poem I've ever written is, so a sestina is a poem that you pick 6 words and you write 6 stanzas, and the words just end the lines in different order each time. So I've written a triple sestina, which means instead of working with 6 words, I work with 18 words. And so it would be probably about 20, probably about 18 stanzas of 6 lines each. I think that's the longest one. I wrote one about my mom and dad. You're welcome.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. In the chat, let's see, Wendy Carlisle asked, could you speak about your transition from spoken word to page poetry?
Sure. I got introduced to poetry by getting up on stage and doing it. I was in Chicago at the time. There was a poetry festival that was meant to bring together performing poets and page poets somehow, and that's where I met Gwen Brooks. But and I went in. I just said, okay, you guys are old enough. It was in a bar over the course of a winter afternoon, and I said, oh, good, let's go drink and laugh at the poets. And I didn't know anything else about it, and it wound up that there was a really vibrant literary community I didn't know anything about, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I started going to the place where the Poetry Slam was in Chicago. The transition, what happens is you get pigeonholed. People say, oh, you're a performing poet. This means you're not this kind of poet. And we were all reading to each other all the time. And I said, I know poetry world is bigger than this. So I started going to listen to people who were supposedly academic poets and realized that we were doing the same thing. That, we had audience, they had grant money, but we were doing the same thing. So I started going to these places, and people were telling us, the performers, that we weren't real poets, that we were more actors than anything else. And I would listen to like Sharon Olds and go, no, we're storytellers. We're all storytellers. We're just telling our stories in a different way. And so some people who I started slamming with are still slamming, because they kind of believed that in their heads that what they were doing wasn't legitimate. And I had to get over the idea that there was a certain type of poetry that was suited for the stage and a certain type that was suited for the page, and think that if you are writing well, you should be able to take your poems anywhere. And that was the main thing. I still care a lot about how my poems reach the air. I care about how they sound. So right now with a poem, and I say it out loud, I'm kind of listening, and I might go and change some words, I might revise, things like that. Because for me, it's fine on the page, but it's meant to be, it's an A-U-R-A-L-R. It's meant to be heard. I read poem out loud. When I'm reading someone else's poems, I read them out loud all the time. So the most important thing is the story that you're going to leave with and take home. I want there to be maybe a line or so that comes back to you, or a story. And the best thing of all is when you go home and say, I can do that, and you pick up a pen and you start writing. That to me is the ultimate. So if there's no difference between page and stage, it's all just write the best that you can, and make sure when you're done writing the story that you wanted to tell is still there.
Amazing. And that this thank you for that. This feeds into this question that was on. They said earlier, Patricia Smith said, if you were thinking about becoming anything else, drop it and become a poet. So what's your advice for becoming a poet, since you just said?
Well, the thing, one of the best writers I ever had as a student, when I was teaching in Staten Island, that school accepted everybody. It didn't matter what your high school experience was. So some people could have been published the next day. Some people should have never graduated from high school, And a lot of the students were there to learn what was going to make them money. So they wanted a city job. A lot of those people wanted to be policemen or firemen. My best student, his great-grandfather, his grandfather, and his father were all firemen. And nobody ever asked him what he wanted to be, right? He was just going to be a fireman. And he didn't really want to be a fireman. He was such a good writer. And I said, look, you can be a poet and a fireman, or a poet and a policeman, or a poet and somebody who bags groceries, or a poet and a teacher, and it enhances your life. It's not something you say, well, if I have time, in spare time, I'll be a poet, or whatever. So it's not like you have to give up whatever it is that you want to do to be a poet. A poet will help you have a clearer idea and a clearer vision of what you are actually doing and who you are. So I'm lucky enough I love teaching, but I love teaching poetry. I'm constantly surrounded by what I'm passionate about. But I teach somewhere now where in my class are people studying molecular biology and political science and really smart kids, but they're starting to realize that this is going to help me through my life. It's not something I take down from the bookshelf when I have time. So becoming a poet doesn't mean, I was joking around when I said drop everything, but whatever life you're living will be enhanced by the fact that you can look at it as a poet and look at it, if I didn't, poetry is where I scream into my cupped hands. At the end of the day, I'm like, one more meeting, I'm just gonna, and then you have to remember, and I ask myself weird things. I'll be walking along and I'll say, what's that tree saying? What's going on? You learn to look at the world like a poet, and it makes you that much more of a complete person.
Thank you so much. So we're all poets, we just don't know it. Were there any more questions before I thank?
They're like, let us out.
Okay, I'm gonna do my thank yous. I always gotta do my thank yous.
Anyway, thank you guys so much. This was nice.
you so much. It's wonderful.
Glad we got rid of all those pesky college students.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Have you ever had somebody take their mic, just turn their mic off and go to the restroom?
Some hot mics you just don't want to have.
That's right.
And my WCU Poetry Center crew and the associated administrative teams and councils that support our programming. I want to start with the team with College of Arts and Humanities, my Poetry Center intern Emma Dwyer, Cindy Peel, the Poetry Center's administrative liaison, handles all the details that go into making these events go smoothly. And I'm grateful for the encouragement of the College of Arts and Humanities Assistant Dean, Jean and Jay, and the support of the Department Dean, Jen Bacon. The Poetry Center is grateful for the support of our president, Dr. Fiorentino. Before, let's see, I'd like to also thank the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, led by Dr. Tracy Robinson, for their generous support of this program. And I'd like to express my deep gratitude to my colleagues in English and also our Poetry Center Faculty Advisory Board, co-led by my colleague in English, Professor Pearson, and also the Poetry Center Council, whose president is Mr. Keene Spencer, and one of our Poetry Center Council members, George, is in the back. George right now, Mr. Right now is in the back. My colleagues in the Department of English, especially the chair, Michael Burns, and our administrator, Sarah Taylor, and the director of graduate studies, Justin Ryder-Makers, have been instrumental in the development of this program. I'd just like to thank everyone. We do have some books for sale if you're interested. If not, there will also be and open mics.